Nancy twirled in front of the mirror, admiring how the sharp blue dress hugged her curves perfectly. She had found it in a bustling market, buried under a pile of thrift clothes, or we call it okerika, also known as used clothes. The intricate yellow embroidery and the rich fabric made it stand out. Every time she wore it, people couldn't stop complimenting her. "Wow, Nancy, you look stunning," her friend Thelma exclaimed as she walked into the party. "Thanks, Thelma," Nancy replied, smiling. She loved the attention. The dress had become her favorite, making her feel special every time she wore it. But tonight, something felt different. As she mingled with the guests, Nancy noticed Alfredo, a charming young man she had a crush on, making his way towards her. Her heart skipped a beat. "Nancy, you looked more beautiful every time I see you," Alfredo said, his eyes locking onto hers. She blushed, but she then felt a sudden sharp chill run down her spine. The room seemed to grow colder, and a faint whispering sound filled her ears. She glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice. Suddenly, Alfredo's expression changed. He looked confused and frightened. "Are you okay, Nancy? You seem different." Before she could respond, Alfredo staggered back, clutching his chest, his face contorted in pain. I can't breathe," he gasped. Panic spread through the room as Alfredo collapsed. Nancy felt a strange dark energy surrounding her. The whispers grew louder, almost as if they were mocking her. She tried to move, but it felt like the dress was tightening around her, holding her in place. Nancy lived with her mother, Linda, in a small apartment in Lagos, Nigeria. Her mother had raised her single-handedly after her father left when she was just a child. They were not well off, but Linda always made sure Nancy had everything she needed. Linda had a knack for finding the best deal in thrift market. She believed thrift clothes had more character and were more affordable. Nancy inherited those love for thrift shopping from her mother. They spent countless weekends sifting through piles of clothes, laughing and chatting about their finds. One sunny afternoon, Nancy came across the blue dress in a small dusty shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the market. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with a piercing gaze, seemed eager to sell it to her. "This dress is special, my dear," the woman said with a mysterious smile. "It will make you feel unique." Nancy was captivated by the dress and bought it without a second thought. It quickly became her favorite piece of clothes. Every time she wore it, people showered her with compliments, and she felt an inexplicable boost in her confidence. After the incident at the party, Nancy couldn't shake off the eerie feelings. Alfredo was rushed to the hospital, and although he recovered, he refused to talk to her again. He claimed that he saw something terrifying in her eyes. That night, Nancy tried to forget about it, but strange things kept happening whenever she wore the dress. A few weeks later, Nancy decided to wear the dress to a job interview. She had been looking forward to this opportunity for months and wanted to make the best impression. As she walked into the building, heads turned, and people complimented her on her appearance. The interview started well. The panel seemed impressed with her qualification and demeanor. However, as the session went on, Nancy began to feel the now familiar chill. The room darkened slightly, and the whispering started again, just at the edge of her hearing. Nancy tried to focus, but the whispers grew louder. The panelists began to look uneasy. One of them, Mr. Johnson, suddenly stood up, his face pale. I'm sorry, I need to step out," he said, rushing out of the room. The others exchanged worried glances. Moments later, a scream echoed from the hallway. The panelists ran out, leaving Nancy alone in the room. She followed, her heart pounding. They found Mr. Johnson on the floor, clutching his head and muttering incoherently. He was taken away by paramedics, and the interview was abruptly ended. Nancy was shaking. She knew the dress had something to do with the incident, but she couldn't understand how or why. She decided to take a break from wearing it, hoping things would return to normal. Despite her resolve, Nancy found herself drawn more and more to that dress again. She wore it to a family gathering, thinking it would be safe in a familiar environment. Her relatives admired her and she felt the usual surge of confidence. However, as the evening progressed, the strange things started happening again. Her cousin Mark, who had always been so close to her, began acting strangely. He stared at her with wide, frightened eyes and started mumbling about seeing shadows around her. Nancy tried to calm him down, but he grew increasingly agitated. Suddenly, he let out a blood-curdling scream and ran out of the house. The family was thrown into chaos as they tried to find him. Hours later, they found Mark huddled in a corner of the garden, shaking uncontrollably. He couldn't explain what he had seen, only that it was something dark and terrifying. The incident left the family rattled, and Nancy couldn't ignore the grueling sense of dread any longer. Determined to understand what was happening, Nancy decided to test the dress one last time. She wore it to a casual outing with Thelma and some friends. They went to a popular cafe and everything seemed normal at first. Nancy even began to relax, thinking perhaps she had imagined the previous incident. But as the evening wore on, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. Nancy felt the temperature drop and she saw shadows moving at the edge of her vision. One of their friends, Daniel, who had been joking and laughing, suddenly fell silent. He stared at Nancy, his eyes wide with fear. "What is that behind you?" he whispered, pointing shakily. Nancy turned but saw nothing. When she looked back, Daniel had collapsed, unconscious. The cafe erupted in panic and paramedics were called. Daniel was revived, but he couldn't remember what had happened. He only recalled feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. After this terrifying incident, Nancy knew she had to find out the truth about the dress. She confided in Thelma, who agreed to help her investigate. They decided to return to the market where Nancy had bought the dress. When they arrived, the shop was gone. The spot where it stood was now an empty space. They asked around, but no one remembered the elderly woman or her shop. Desperate for answer, Nancy and Thelma sought out a local historian who specialized in the supernatural. Mr. Daniel listened to their story with a grave expression. He asked to see the dress and examine it closely. "This dress is haunted," he said. Finally, it once belonged to a woman named Amelia. She was accused of witchcraft and executed. Her spirit is bound to the dress, seeking revenge on anyone who wears it. Nancy felt a cold dread settled in her chest. What do we do? Mr. Daniel advised them to perform a cleansing ritual, but warned it would be dangerous. Determined to free herself from the curse, Nancy agreed. They gathered the necessary items and prepared for the ritual in Nancy's apartment. As they began, the room grew colder and the whispers returned, louder than ever. Candles flickering violently, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Nancy, wearing the dress one last time, repeated the incantation Mr. Daniel had given them. Suddenly, Amelia's spirit appeared, her face twisted with rage and sorrow. "You cannot free yourself from me," she hissed. "I will not rest until I have my revenge." Nancy stood her ground, continuing to chant. Thelma and Mr. Daniel joined in, their voices growing louder. The spirit shrieked, her form distorting and wriggling. With one final burst of energy, Amelia's spirit was banished, and the dress fell to the floor in tatters. Exhausted but relieved, Nancy knew she was finally free. The haunting presence was gone, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She decided to avoid thrift clothes for a while, wary of the unknown history. Thelma stayed by her side, helping her recover from the ordeal. They grew even closer, their bond strengthened by the terrifying experience. Nancy's story spread among their friends, serving as a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk in seemingly harmless items. Curious about Amelia's story, Nancy and Thelma visited the local library. They discovered that Amelia had been a talented seamstress in a small village many years ago. She had a unique gift for creating beautiful clothes that seemed to enchant everyone who wore them. However, her success made her enemies. A jealous rival accused her of witchcraft, claiming that her clothes were imbibed with dark magic. The townspeople, driven by fear and superstition, turned against her. They believed the rival's lies and accused Amelia of using her clothes to control and harm others. Amelia was arrested and sentenced to death. Before she was executed, she cursed the clothes she had made, vowing that her spirit will haunt them and seek revenge on anyone who wore them. Her anger and sorrow bound her spirit to the clothes, turning them into vessels of her vengeance. But Amelia's story wasn't unique. The historian explained that clothes often carry the essence of the people who wore them. Emotions, memories, and even spirits could become attached to garments, especially those that had experienced intense emotions or tragic events. In Amelia's case, her anger and sorrow were so powerful that they bound her spirit to the blue dress, making it a potent vessel for her vengeance. Other thrift clothes might not be haunted in such a dramatic way, but they could still carry residual energies or emotions from their previous owners. Some people might experience strange feelings or minor disturbances, while others might be affected more severely depending on the nature of the attachment. It wasn't always evident, but the history of the clothing could influence those who wore them. With Amelia's spirit finally laid to rest, Nancy began to heal from her harrowing experience. She and Thelma became more cautious about their thrift find, always considering the potential history behind each item. The haunting had taught them a valuable lesson about the unseen history of the clothes they wore. Nancy started sharing her story with others, warning them about the potential danger of thrift clothes or used clothes. She used her experience to raise awareness and help people understand the importance of knowing the history of their garments. Her tale became a cautionary one, spreading through her community and beyond. One day, as she and Thelma walked through the market, Nancy couldn't help but feel a mix of nostalgia and caution. The market was bustling as usual, with vendors displaying their wares and customers browsing through piles of clothes. "You know," Thelma said, nudging Nancy, "I'm still amazed by how much one dress can change a person's life." Nancy smiled. It's a reminder that everything has a history, even the clothes we wear. As they continued to explore the market, Nancy picked up a vintage jacket. She examined it carefully, feeling a twinge of unease but also curiosity. "Do you think there could be another story hidden in this one?" she asked Thelma, her voice tinged with both caution and intrigue. Thelma shrugged. "Maybe or maybe not. We just have to become more aware of the clothes we put in our body." Nancy nodded, appreciating the wisdom in her friend's word. She decided to be more discerning about her choices, understanding that while thrift clothes could be treasures and affordable, they also came with their own hidden histories. The ordeal with the blue dress had transformed Nancy's perspective. She had learned that clothes could carry much more than just fabric and thread. They could carry the essence of the people who wore them, their joy, sorrow, and even their spirit. The haunting experience had taught her a profound lesson about the unseen history behind every item. As she walked through the market with Thelma, Nancy couldn't help but wonder about the countless stories hidden within the garments around her. She had faced the terror of a haunted dress and came out stronger, more aware of the world's mystery. Months later, Nancy received a package in the mail. Inside inside was a simple note: beware of the past. Along with it was another vintage dress. This one, a vibrant red dress. Nancy's heart raced as she stared at it, wondering what new horrors it might bring. So, when next you find a piece of beautiful dress in a thrift store, just remember Nancy's tale and consider the history it might hold. While she still loved the thrill of finding unique items, she now approached thrift shopping with caution and respect for the past. Her story served as a haunting reminder. Every clothes, every garment has a history. Do you really know the history of the clothes you wear? Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to share this story with your family and your friends, especially to those your friends who love thrift clothes. Do they really know the history of the clothes they are buying? Well, please check out the story you see on the screen. I promise you're going to love them. Till I see you again in my next story, remember to always know the history of the clothes you are buying. Goodbye.